Welcome back, everybody, to the Shoot Fast podcast. I am your host, Cody Axon, sitting down with Joel Park.
Hi there.
Hello, Joel. So today we're going to talk about stage planning and just all the things that go into getting ready to shoot a stage. So first off, Joel, describe to me, when you go to a major match, what your process is for, getting ready for the match in general. Like showing up the day before, that sort of thing.
Absolutely. If it's a club match, you need to be there at least an hour early. If it's a major match, I would be there the day before, the night before. That way you have plenty of time to look at everything, you're not rushed, and you can make an educated decision on what you want to do. Because when you're walking through, you get your 5 minutes to walk the stage, you're going to have 10 to 15 other dudes in your way, and you might be rushed, or you might not have enough time to think about it or plan, which we'll get to what you actually want to do. So.
What do you think about when you walk the stage the day before? Because I agree. I mean, I think that's the generally accepted thing. If you are going to go to a major match, you're going to spend a bunch of money, traveling there, getting a hotel room, flying, whatever the case is. You need to get there the day before and walk the stages the day before. That's just part of the match. Like, if you're not doing that, you're putting yourself at a disadvantage. So when you're walking it the day before, are you setting in like really strict plans that you're for sure going to do the next day, or how are you approaching that?
More than likely, I'm picking a plan, and that is what I'll do the next day. If I have enough time to change it, maybe I'll think about that. But if it's something like a memory stage, which we'll get to, once I pick a plan, even if I'm shooting with somebody that's better than me, normally, and this happened before, maybe last year, I was squatted with like two super squad level dudes, and we got to a memory stage, and we talked about stages before that. We got to that one, and I just kept what I had to myself. Anybody wants to know what I'm doing, that's fine. But at a memory stage, I'm not going to change it, even if they have something that's maybe marginally better, because the most important thing is just to hit all the targets.
Yeah. I try not to get too committed to my stage plans like the night before when I'm walking them, before I actually am on the stage. I get a pretty good idea of what I want to do. But what I don't do is I don't go through and like visualize the stage a whole bunch and like really burn that plan of this is for sure what I'm going to do. Because especially if it's like a match where maybe I don't know anybody and I'm maybe doing it by myself the day before, and then I get to the stage and like the whole squad is doing it a totally different way than what I saw, or there's somebody else who I'm talking about and there's something that they see with something that I didn't see, and there's something just totally different that's way better. That I like to leave myself open to being able to change plans on the day of. What I won't do is when you get to the stage and you have a 5-minute walkthrough, I'm not going to like walk it through one way for 4 minutes and then all of a sudden change it at the last minute and try and completely change my plan. But I like to stay open of if something else comes up on the day of, be able to change, but still have a pretty good idea of what I'm going to do.
If it's something minor, like maybe an activator sequence, how much stuff you want to take in the idle time between, the activator and whatever's being activated, I would change that even up to the last minute, especially if it's towards the beginning of the stage, because it doesn't take a lot of memory to commit to that for me anyway. But yes, if it was something major, then I would not change it.
Okay. So, you're first walking on the stage and figuring out what you're going to do. What's the first thing you do when you walk on a new stage you haven't seen before?
Find out how many rounds it is and find all the targets. Don't be afraid to walk behind the stage if you need to, especially if it's a memory stage, which we'll get to. But make sure you just know where everything's at, and you have the right round count. You're not counting a target twice. If you need to, especially if you shoot with a friend, don't be afraid to have one of you go, obviously you can't activate anything, but walk behind the stage and have somebody stand next to a target, and then maybe the other person's up in the shooting area looking just to make sure that you've got them all and that you're seeing everything. You're not counting anything twice.
Yeah, I agree. I do the same thing, and then also I like to look and just kind of get a basic idea of where, like, what the shooting area looks like, what the different positions look like. Like, is there ports in the walls? Just a very general idea of kind of what do things look like, where are all the targets, and then from there, I think the next step is figuring out what is available from where.
Where you have to go to.
Yeah, so where you have to go to and what's available from where. So, yeah, every stage will have certain spots where you have to go there. I obviously USPSA rules, unless it's some club match where they're determining what boxes you have to shoot from, that sort of thing. But if it's a level 2 or higher match, then they can't tell you have to go to a certain spot. But what they do to make you still go to the certain spots is you put a target that you can only see from a certain spot, and it's essentially a required position at that point. Otherwise, you're going to get hemmed up with a whole bunch of penalties. So you have to go there.
And that's where I'd also start looking to see if there's any positions I don't have to go to. If there's anything I can eliminate without adding extra difficulty or...
Yeah, I agree. I've noticed a lot with newer shooters, that's a thing that people either don't understand or forget, is just because there's a position there doesn't mean you have to stop there and shoot. There's a lot of stages where you can go and shoot them in 2 or 3 positions, but maybe there's 4 or 5 spots where you can stop and shoot. And you see newer shooters, they'll want to stop at every single spot. And
or maybe you're 10 yards back from the port, and you leave a position, you kind of just crouch maybe, or you lean a little bit, and you can see that other target, and you don't have to run all the way up. You could shoot through that port from a ways back.
Yeah, so anywhere you can cut out positions is usually value added, but there's definitely a limit to that too. And we'll talk about that later as we kind of get into ways to maximize the stage. So you're on the stage, you're figuring out what you have to shoot or where you have to go to certain places to be able to shoot certain targets. What about targets that you can see from multiple places? What do you do with those?
I try to pick probably the least disaster factor. So if you're closer to the target, if you have options and maybe there are no shoots more from one spot, or I like the presentation better from another one, capacity could lead into that also. So you kind of just have to know it when you see it. But I try to pick the way that makes the most sense. It's not complicated for me to remember. And you can kind of just look at how everyone else is doing it also. And normally, I don't want to reinvent the wheel on that. If you see what everybody else is doing, it's not a bad idea to do what they're doing also.
You said a pretty high, or something about a disaster factor. Yeah. And we generally don't like to do this, but I have to digress into story time a little bit. So,
oh, good grief.
At 2015 Nationals, Joel was not there, but I was there with our friend Greg, and we were walking stage the day before, just like we're talking about. And there's an older gentleman who was walking stage at the same time, and he kind of ended up following us around and talking about stage plans with us. And no matter what it was, no matter what the stage plan element we were talking about, his comment on everything was, well, that's a pretty high disaster factor. Like, it didn't matter. It didn't matter if it was something that was a high disaster factor or not. It could have even just been like a position you had to go to and shoot. It was like, oh, that's a pretty high disaster factor over there. So now everything that we talk about always has a high disaster factor, because that one guy just thinks that everything has a disaster factor, which it does.
Yeah.
But, you maybe don't have to say it about every single thing. Like, we understand whether or not there's a disaster factor or something.
It was important. He just wanted to make sure you realized.
So one thing I like to do after you're kind of determining what you're going to shoot from where, and you got an idea of, there's places you have to go to, targets you can see from multiple places, and you're deciding where you're going to take those from. One thing that I like to do too before I get too committed is I like to look at the stage and just think about what's kind of the theme, or what's something that stands out on the stage. And not every stage has that. But if a stage has something where, when you talk about the stage plans, you talk about how the stage went with other competitors, then they're going to refer to it as the blank stage. Then I don't know, that's something I like to take note of and, maybe think through how I'm going to handle that. So, for example, a stage with a 30-yard or 40-yard target, I would end up referring to that as, the 40-yard target stage, or something like that. Or like a stage with a table start. I would call it probably the table start stage. Or a stage where every target is at 5 yards and it is like a blazing fast hoser stage. So the reason why I kind of just think about things in these terms is because that's going to end up being something that I end up thinking about in my walkthrough, and it just kind of helps me categorize what's going on that stage in my head. It's really not required, but that's just it's just how I think about stages in my head. So
another thing I would look at is if you can tell where the grass is worn down, or where a bunch of people have been running, maybe from the staff shooting the day before, or if it's a multiple day match and you're shooting the last couple days, that's another really good indicator of if everyone else, what everyone else's plan is.
Yeah, you kind of have to turn into like a Native American tracker sometimes when you're doing this. Yeah, because you start looking at like broken leaves and like broken twigs and where the grass is worn down. If you put your ear to the ground and listen for hoof prints or for galloping horses, that can
hoof
help.
Prints, huh?
Yeah, hoof
you
prints.
have to listen for those.
Yeah, whatever.
All right.
But no, that can be really helpful information. I know we had talked about specifically there was one stage where we shot at a nationals match where it made sense to run out of bounds and then run back in just because of kind of the way your momentum was taking you, and you could see a very clear path. It was a bay with green grass on it, and there was brown grass in exactly the spot where we were going to go. It's like, okay, well, I guess everybody and their brother's doing this because like the grass is dying from this stage.
Yeah, I remember you walked on that stage and you got down on your hands and knees. You're like, oh, there was a size 12.5 boot here. And then, you were tracking their footprints. It was great.
Exactly.
What do you think about reloading for your capacity? When does that tie in? I realize you shoot a gun that holds like 1 million bullets now. You don't have to reload anymore. But for us peasants with a 10-round gun or maybe an 8-round gun, while you're walking the stage, do you think you should say, well, I've got six rounds here. I've got 4 more in my magazine. I need to find something else to shoot. Or maybe there's only one target, but I really don't want to reload after just shooting one target. What do you think about that?
I think a lot of people start from that point, and I don't like stage planning like that. Especially people who shoot lower capacity divisions, which I know I shoot limited, but I did shoot production for longer than I've shot limited, so I've done both plenty. I think if you approach things as, well, where am I going to do my reloads, and that's the only thing you're thinking about when you start looking at a stage, then you're going to miss a lot of what could be better stage plans.
You're letting the reloads dictate your stage design.
Yeah, and there are spots where you're going to do that, but I think that's the last thing you should do. So, and the same thing definitely applies for limited. I mean, a 32 round stage, I'm still going to have to reload somewhere in there. And I think people can get really wrapped up in thinking about where they're going to reload. When, especially for higher capacity division, it really doesn't matter that much. Like, just pick a spot where, you have
the most movement.
The most movement, if it's there. I mean, so if it's a 32 round stage and I shoot, 12 rounds at the beginning, and there's not like a bunch of steel or something like that, something I'm worried about needing extra shots later in the stage, then I'll just reload. If there's a spot where there's movement, I'll just reload and I'll shoot the rest of the stage. Or if it works the opposite way, where there's a bunch of shooting at the beginning and then I have to reload for like 4 more rounds at the end. It doesn't bother me that I'm only going to shoot 4 rounds out of a magazine if it makes sense for the plan. I mean, the same thing applies for production too. If you're going to reload and go to a position and shoot 2 rounds out of the mag, and it makes sense to reload there and drop 8 rounds, like that's fine. I think a lot of people get really wrapped up in I have to shoot 10 rounds.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah,
yes.
Because people think that, I don't know, they have this weird compulsion. Like, I don't know if it's like a tactics thing. Like, they're going to get killed in the streets if they drop
because you're
mags.
doing a reload and you think that's time that I'm not shooting.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do the most shooting before I have to reload, I think is the mindset. But I'm not. If I needed to shoot 2 rounds or 3 rounds and do a mag change because that was what made sense and I needed a full magazine for the next position, that's perfectly fine. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
So that is like the last thing I decide on after I have a stage plan. I know where everything's at.
And people will do standing reloads to avoid exactly what we're talking about, to avoid like shooting 3 rounds out of a magazine, when you could just, reload while moving and then reload while moving to the next position. So, I mean, if anything, that's the main thing is obviously most people know you want to plan your reloads where you're moving. So especially for limited, when I have kind of the luxury of deciding a bunch of different spots where I could reload in the stage, my goal, I just try and find a place where I can reload during a long movement, and I try and choose a place where it's not like really awkward movement if possible. And sometimes it's not possible, but if I have the option between reloading, while running left to right a long distance, I'm going to do that versus, while I'm running backwards up range. And
why would you choose right to left as opposed to left to right? Just, I'm sure most people understand this, but just for the aspect of the reload and having the mag well pointing towards your...
Did I say left to right or say right to left? I don't remember.
I don't remember. I don't listen to you most of the time.
Yeah.
Why would you choose going one way or the other?
Basically, so most of the time, if you can, you want to reload while running toward your strong side. So that might have been why Joel mixed my words around, because he's left-handed, so his brain doesn't quite work the same or properly.
Thank you.
But ideally, you want to be moving towards your strong side and while you're reloading, just because that naturally, so you're going to end up pointing the gun downrange. That points the gun across your body, and when you reload, your gun's going to be in front of your face, and it's the way that is kind of the most natural for people, and it's pretty easy to not break the 180 while doing that.
What about shooting? Go ahead, sorry.
If you're moving to your weak side, then you have to consciously turn your whole body while you're moving. You got to keep the gun downrange away from your body and kind of reach across your body with your offhand in order to reload the gun, which I practice a lot. I'm not afraid to do that on a stage, but if I can avoid it, then generally I will.
What do you think about shooting to capacity? So at production, if I'm at 10+1, what do you think about shooting 11 shots from a position, or maybe not if I didn't have the choice?
Yeah, this is something I find myself...
And do you plan for misses? So I guess part of that conversation.
This is something I actually do a lot in limited, surprisingly. But I think a lot of times, like especially for like our indoor matches, I see a lot of like 20-round stages. So my gun holds 20 rounds in the mag with the ones that I can reload. And then if I can stuff an extra round on there where the mag is like bursting, and so it has 21 rounds in it, but I will only do that just when I'm starting because it's so hard to push the mag in. I got to like tap it a bunch of times, like say a prayer, tug on it, and make sure that's not going to fall out because that mag like barely goes in. So I can, and then obviously I'll rack another round in from another mag, so I can start the gun with 22 rounds. And there's a lot of like 20, 21, 22 round stages. So I often look at stages from that aspect of, do I want to shoot this whole thing without changing a mag, or do I just want to add a reload in here somewhere just to be safe? And for me, it really depends on what the shots are and what the positions look like.
The target difficulty. If you have a head box, not to cut you off, if you have a head box, maybe I would plan for an extra shot. Not that I'm going to shoot 3 at it, but just in case I need an extra one, I would have that built in to my stage plan. Yeah, I mean, this is one of those things where the best answer is it depends. It depends on what the stage looks like. It depends on what the target difficulty is. A lot of steel targets. If you have a lot of steel targets, I tend to be more likely to do more reloads or err on the side of trying to have extra rounds in the gun to give. Because, if you miss a steel, it's very obvious in front of you and you're going to keep shooting until you knock down that steel in most situations. So having extra rounds there is definitely a good thing. And if I approach a position, let's say there's, a plate rack, there's 6 steel targets. If I run in that position and I have 6 rounds in the gun, I'm going to be super careful when I shoot those 6 shots. And there's a chance I still might miss. Where if I run in that position, I have like 15 rounds in the gun, I'm not going to go crazy and hose it. Well, I might, but the goal is not to go crazy and hose it, but I can be a little bit more aggressive, and even if I have an extra shot or two, it's going to be way faster than had I shot that plate rack. In bullseye mode.
In bullseye mode, because I'm terrified that I'm going to miss a shot.
For sure. While you're walking through, I think finding the 180 and being very mindful of that also plays into my stage plan, because if you have first of all, obviously, it should be apparent by stage design that you're going to be breaking the 180 if you shoot a target.
Yes.
But that doesn't always happen. So I think just being mindful of where that's at. I can think of a stage at Area 3 last year where you shot, it was like targets stacked side by side. So there was 2 stacks of targets next to each other. So 8 shots. And it wasn't on the 180, but it was awfully close. So after that, I was planning on doing a mag change. So I made a conscious decision. During my stage plan, I'm going to draw, I'm going to shoot these 8 shots, I'm going to turn and face back up range before I hit the mag release button. Because it's just, it's human nature. When you go to hit that button, you flip the gun a little bit, and I don't want to be close to 180. So I'm very mindful about just where that is and making sure, even if I lost a 0.2 of a second, it doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. So just facing, a safe range or a safe way.
Yeah, I'm guessing
I do those kind of things.
I'm guessing what you're talking about too is you were facing if you're facing targets on the 180 on your weak side. So if
correct,
me as a right-hand shooter, I'm shooting targets that are directly on the 180 on my left side. If I initiate a reload while facing that exact 180, it's not a DQ if you're facing the 180 shooting a target. But if you break your grip just that little bit to flip a magazine out to get to the mag release, most people will turn the gun in their hand just a little bit or turn their wrist just a little bit to where the gun is now rotated, now you're breaking 180. So that's what Joel's talking about. So, you plan it into the stage of, if I just do my reload the normal way while I'm right after shooting this target, I'm going to break 180. So I'm going to not do that. I'm going to plan to square my body down range before I do it. And that's definitely something that we always talk about that when we walk stages, of spots where
make sure you don't overrun this target,
where the 180 could possibly be a concern, and possible DQ traps. Or
so what you're trying to say is it's a high disaster factor.
Exactly. Like there's a pretty high disaster factor over here that you're going to get DQ'd. So make sure you're doing what you're supposed to do here. What about limiting overall movement? Do you think that's something that you're trying to do on a stage?
Oh, for sure. I just love moving extra if I need to. But no, obviously the goal is to go the least amount of positions and the least amount of movement. So obviously if you could stand in one spot and just ice everything, that would be the way to do it. But obviously for any given stage, you're not going to be able to. Also, I wanted to bring up, some stages have options, we're talking about movement, where maybe you could run down to the end and just hammer some targets at 7 yards, or you could stay at the back and shoot them at 20 yards. What do you think of those kind of stages?
So it always depends. That's kind of the asterisk on this entire episode, is everything we're saying, it always depends on the exact situation, on the exact shooter, and these are just kind of general principles that we like to follow. But there's plenty of times we're going to break our own rules on what we're talking about here. This is something as far as targets where you can shoot them from further back or further up. I used to have the mindset of, my bullets travel like 900 feet per second. I can't run that fast, so I would rather let my bullets cover that distance than have my feet cover that distance. But the reality is, if I shoot from further back, then my shooting is going to be quite a bit slower. So I'm going to be taking, depending on what it is, I could take an extra tenth of a second, 20th of a second. It just really depends on the situation. But I'm going to be shooting slower, and if there's a whole bunch of targets, then that's going to add possibly seconds or more to my time, because I am taking my time and making sure that I'm shooting those targets accurately and trying to hit them from further back. And there's a better chance, even though I'm taking all that extra time, there's a better chance that I'm still going to end up dropping points. Whereas if it's not going to be like a huge time suck to run some extra distance, and then I can get up in front of those targets and just burn them like as fast as I possibly can, and probably hit all alphas, because you see it a lot, especially at some of the matches that we shoot around here, where they have it set up where you can shoot it from further back and be awesome for shooting it from far away, or you can run up and just like you like to say,
like muzzle contact.
Yeah, you just ice that target from like contact distance, and you can hit all alphas, and you don't risk dropping so many points. And a lot of times, sometimes in those situations, you'll see it where the time is more or less a wash, or maybe it's even a little bit slower to run all the way up. But because you have that extra accuracy, and especially if you're shooting minor, shooting production, running up and getting all alphas sometimes is worth that little bit of extra running, because you end up with way better hits in the end.
I would look at three things: how many targets there are. If it's just one, I might take the shot. If there's 4 of them, I'm probably going to run. I would think about your own skill, because let's be honest, sometimes if it's a head box, I might be really comfortable with that, and I might think even on a good day I'm not going to be able to hit that. So that could help dictate which way I'm going to go. And then if I'm on the fence about it, if you're able to watch somebody else shoot it, or, which I was going to get into, watch Instagram or Facebook that night and see how everyone else is shooting it if they've uploaded match videos.
Yeah.
Because normally, if like the guy that's going to win the match, the way he's going to shoot it, more than likely there's a reason he chose that, especially if it's trending that way. I will probably be a follower and do what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, I agree. And that's actually one of the... there's a lot less extreme examples of this too, where I really try to... As a general rule, again, it always depends, but as a general rule, I always try and shoot targets from as close as possible.
Sure.
So even if it's different, sometimes if it's different, it's like 5 yards, but it doesn't cost me anything. Like it's a natural part of the stage where I'm going to end up running this position anyway, and I can cut out like 5 or 8 yards that I'm going to have to shoot this target from. So I shoot at 3 yards instead of 11 yards. Generally speaking, I'm going to try and take that choice of shooting it from close up. It's not because I can't hit it from far away, but it's that assurance of, well, if I shoot it from 3 yards away, I'm not going to miss, and I'm going to be able to shoot that target as fast as I can pull the trigger, and I'm probably going to shoot most of the alphas.
With confidence.
With confidence. So being able to shoot a target as fast as I can and still hit alphas, generally speaking, that is going to mitigate the having to move extra distance. But again, it always depends.
Okay, so you've got the target. You know where the targets are. You have your plan more or less laid out. You know where you got to go to shoot stuff. Do you plan your footwork into your stage plan? Maybe, drop step or, leaning, or how do you approach that at all?
Yeah, I've done this for a while where I definitely plan in my movement. I think if I don't, a lot of times I'll end up doing it the same way anyway, but I just like to think about, like, okay, how's my body going to move in these positions? So like you're saying, if it's something where you have a hard lean, what's that going to look like? What's that going to feel like? And then do I have to get out of this position? How am I going to do it? So yeah, if I'm ending a position on a really hard lean, or maybe I'm almost up on 1 foot, or maybe I am up on 1 foot, then I'm going to think, well, I'm going to do a drop step where I drop out of bounds and kind of re-drop my weight, and so that way I can go running back the other direction. Or maybe there's 2 ports that are 3 steps apart. I will actually plan, like, okay, what are my steps going to look like? Am I going to take my outside foot and cross it over, and then that'll put me where I want to be? Or am I going to lead with my foot that's facing the port and take 2 or 3 steps? I mean, I go through on that level of detail.
And I would add to that what I do, I think that you started getting me to do, is I would decide if I'm going to keep both hands on the gun or if I'm going to take a hand off the gun.
Yeah.
I decide most of that during the walkthrough.
Yeah. And I remember, like, asking you, are you going to take your hand off the gun here? And you're like, I don't know. And eventually...
I'd like to think I've got a little bit better since then.
Yeah.
It was last week, but...
Yeah, you'd be like, I don't know. I mean, we'll just see what happens.
Yeah, and you can be okay. I think if you have it built into your training, you're maybe okay with that, see what happens. But the guys winning the match, I'm sure, are programming in their footwork and all that kind of stuff when they walk the stage.
Yeah, and it's not even like I said, I probably would end up doing the same thing whether I planned it or not, because that's just how I've trained myself and how I kind of just naturally move my body. But I like to think about these things ahead of time, so that way I'm not surprised by what things feel like, or I'm not thinking through what's going to happen, because I have planned all this stuff ahead of time. So I have every detail possible planned in to things that I'm going to do.
I have less moments after I started doing that. I have less moments where I'm watching my match video, thinking, what was I thinking there? Why did I do that? Or I didn't realize I was going to do that, and it was because I hadn't thought about that before. I hadn't programmed
it helps. I think it helps if you watch. So obviously we both take match video ourselves, and I think we both kind of advocate that people should take match video themselves, so that you can see what you're doing wrong, see what you're doing right, and kind of get a more accurate measuring stick of what's going on when you're shooting. And that's one thing that I used to notice a lot of my match videos is these, like, strange pauses where like you said, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm wondering what was I thinking there. So I think by kind of thinking through all of the stuff you're going to do, it stops you from having those weird, awkward moments where you're pausing and you don't know what you're doing.
Also, and I don't think it's debatable at all, but just as a statement, use landmarks when you can. So I remember at Area 3 last year, there was a long stretch, Stage 2, there's a long stretch where you run, and there's a bunch of mulch they'd put down at whatever spot where it was muddy. And I remember using that as a landmark when I was running. You're running, I don't know what it was, like 15 yards, as hard as you can. You're starting to decelerate. And then I could just look down, and I saw this big patch of mulch, and I remembered, it was a foot past that is where I want to stop to find the next batch of targets. So if it's maybe a nail holding a fault line down that's a little bit higher, or the grass changes a different color, or this big rock, or obviously you can't go out there with a Sharpie and draw an X or a spray paint can. But
yeah, just so you guys are aware, that is explicitly against the rules to modify the stage.
Yes, but if you see something like where 2 fault lines meet, or maybe a corner of a wall or something like that.
Yeah, we're back to being Native American trackers again, but there really is there's a lot of value to this. So you can do this with stuff that's on the ground and stuff that's on the walls too. So like Joel's talking about, I'll look for like a seam in the fault line.
Totally. And
I'll think I'm going to put my left foot right in front of this seam, or I'm going to center my body on this seam on the fault line. And then I'll also look at the walls. You can see where there's powder burns. Like, this is where I want my gun. This is where I want to be looking, because that target's going to appear as I'm running into position right where that powder burn is because that's where everybody's shooting. Or, I start looking for if it's an opaque wall. So it's not a mesh wall. It's a hard drywall wall with a port in it. So I have an idea of where the targets are behind it, but I can't see them yet. So I will pick a spot on the wall of where I'm going to look, and I know as I run into this position, that target's going to show up, but maybe I want to see another target, and I know what I want to see as I come into that position, and I'm picking kind of a marker for where I want to end up, because really what we're doing by doing this is we're trying to minimize those weird like little steps that you do where you run in a position, but then you realize maybe one target isn't exactly where you want it to be. You
get lost.
Yeah, and then you got to take like a side step, or you do that little, I don't know, like chop step thing that people do where you start look like you're running like a football drill where you got to drop and then chop, and
I never played sports. That sounds terrible.
Yeah, well, I played sports in middle school for 1 year, so I'm pretty much an expert.
An athlete, yeah. But it stops that where you get to the position, you shoot 4 poppers, and you think there's supposed to be 5 here. Like, oh, I see the edge of it, and then you take this big side step, and then you bring your gun back up and you shoot the last popper.
Which it may seem like that's not a big deal, but once those things start, I mean, that could be a half second to a second, and those things add up. And the higher the level of competition you're competing with, the more that stuff matters, because if you shot a stage and maybe hit all the steel in your first shot, you shot every target really fast, and you really feel like there's nothing else you can do to shoot that stage any faster. And then you watch another better shooter shoot it, and they shoot it like a second faster. Well, a lot of times it's just little things like that of not having to make little movements, and just those little small things can add up to the difference between the people who are beating you and being able to take that next step. What do you think about choosing plans based on things that are easy to remember?
For sure, especially and obviously you don't want to make it it doesn't need to be to the point where you're shooting a dumb stage plan. But yes, if it's an easy, like 888, something like that, sometimes if that's the way everyone else is shooting it, you're not going to gain a lot of ground by doing something goofy. There's no reason to reinvent the wheel. But if something is definitely better, I'm not afraid of a more difficult stage plan or activator sequence. Mm-hmm. But keep it simple if possible, and that's all dependent on the stage also. Yeah. I mean, one thing I would include in this is, not swinging back and forth. So even if you have to overrun a target that you could see right away coming into position so that you can get a target that's on one side of it, so that way you can just shoot the whole array left to right or the whole array right to left. Those are always things I'm looking for, of basically being able to shoot one direction the whole way across, rather than I come in on this target because that's the first one that I see, and then I'm going to go to the right for another target, and then I'm going to shoot my way back to the left. You start forgetting targets, or you start swinging the gun around a whole bunch, and you start wasting time, or you put yourself in a position where you're going to start forgetting stuff. And even if you don't forget it to the point where you entirely don't shoot the target and you get penalties, maybe you get that little bit of hesitation where you shoot the target and you're like, okay, now what am I doing? And all that stuff is just adding time. And I guarantee you it's slower. Even if you had a very close, a very far, a very close, and a very far target, you go right to left and left to right, I guarantee it's going to be the fastest because it's just the least amount of movement for your gun. Mm-hmm. And like you said, you don't risk the chance of shooting something twice. So a couple other things I have in my show notes here that I think are not necessarily required things on when you're planning a stage, but the things that I think are kind of value added. So what I have is one thing I look for is opportunities where you can blend positions together. Especially now that I shoot limited and don't have to worry about reload so much. Or aiming. I thought you were going to say don't have to worry about aiming. I don't have to worry about aiming either because I shoot major. And steel, you just shoot 40 in the direction of steel. And it falls right down. And it falls right down because of how big the blast is and how powerful, so much stopping power and just raw power. And then, Charlie's Delta, it doesn't matter. You just shoot hits wherever you want. But no. So now that I don't have to worry about reload so much. So if I have two positions that are maybe like a step or two apart, rather than looking at, okay, these are two positions where I'm going to shoot all the stuff over here and then run over here and shoot all the stuff over here, I start looking for opportunities where, okay, is there a target in this position where I can shoot while backing out, and then I don't pull the gun in and run. I just,
immediately transition the gun to the next spot where I want it to be, and start shooting the next position, and basically take that all as one with just a step in between.
Or you're aiming through the wall.
Aiming through the wall. All that stuff applies here, but definitely rather than looking at the stage as a collection of positions, I try and look for as many opportunities as possible to blend things together where it all just kind of flows together. And I mean, I would still do the same thing in production. You just add a reload in, but even if it required that situation. But definitely, not just because your feet are in a different spot doesn't make it a different position entirely. You want to blend these things together as much as possible because that saves time, and anytime you're saving time is a good thing. Another thing I have in that same vein is opportunities to shoot on the move.
I was going to bring that up, so I'm glad you did.
Well, we're on the same page, I guess, then. So whether or not I'm going to shoot targets on the move is... I mean, that's the problem with this whole topic. It always depends on everything. Everything just depends. I would say the majority of the shooting on the move that we do in USPSA is not what people kind of conceptualize when they think of shooting on the move. I think when I hear shooting on the move, what most people would think is, okay, there's like 3 targets in an array, and you're going to shoot them all as you go by. So
like as a dead run.
Yeah. Or like, I'm going to do this really like smooth looking. I'm going to get my feet moving exactly how I want them to, and I'm going to get the gun up, and then I'm going to go, 6 shots on these 3 targets that are all side by side, and it'll be a really cool looking shooting on the move. What I find in reality, I do more often than anything is I'll shoot like 1 target on the move, just as I go by. So rather than thinking about shooting on the move as something that you're doing where it's kind of a separate thing, where okay, now I'm going to start rolling my feet. I'm going to do my shooting on the move walk, and it's going to look really cool. It's more something that you're blending into the other stuff that you're doing. So yeah, maybe you're running, and then you break your run to a slower movement where you bring the gun up, and you shoot 2 shots on a target that you're going by. Or you shoot on the move on your way out of a position because you shoot maybe the harder targets first. You got 2 targets left and you have room to go. So you just start moving your feet as you're leaving, rather than, okay, now I'm going to do my shooting on the move stance and it's going to look a certain way. I think the more you kind of blend your shooting on the move as something that you're just doing as part of your shooting, rather than this totally separate thing, I think that's kind of the reality of how shooting the move generally works in matches. But like I said, I think people tend to think of shooting on the moves as this totally separate thing where I'm going to do this certain technique when I shoot on the move and it's going to look like this. And I just don't think that's the reality of how it actually works out.
Or I would add icing some easy target on the way into a position where you come in low, your gun's up, you're ready to shoot, you're still kind of moving, you're starting to decelerate, and you hammer some close, like a lay down target or whatever the case is, as you're moving into the position.
Yeah, and the benefit for that is it looks really good on video.
Oh yeah, it does.
So when you're running into a position at full speed, maybe there's like 2 targets really close, and you just go pop, 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 pop. Like, it looks so cool, and generally, like, the pants of everybody watching, men and women, they all just fall off because they're so amazed at what you just did. And
never had that happen. I must not be doing well enough yet.
Yeah,
I'll get better.
You'll get there.
All right, so I don't want to think about that anymore. Another topic I wanted to bring up was like max traps, activators, swinging targets, whatever. When you're doing the walkthrough, I think it's important to find where the A box is and plan to move your gun to that. And I think that was you, that got me started doing that. But if you have a popper or something you're going to activate, I'm going to shoot that popper, I'm going to move the gun to this spot, and I can tell that's where the A zone will be. And I'm finding that out by when they activate the targets, obviously at the beginning of your walkthrough. You can't go through when no RO is there and set up props, as I've seen people do, which is terrible, and I leave the area immediately and tell them not to do that as I'm running away. But
yeah, so
not just shooting at the big brown target that's swinging back and forth.
Yeah, I think this especially applies on swingers. So yeah, you shoot an activator sequence, maybe you shoot a popper, there's some other stuff that you do in between. There's popper, open target, whatever. And then you bring your gun over and you want to plan for not just where the target's going to come out, or there's going to be a swinger over there in that direction, and then it comes out and then you start shooting at it. You start looking at the wall and thinking, okay, the A zone is going to come out right here on the wall. Maybe there's a screw there, or maybe you just kind of have a general idea of, okay, about 2 inches down from the top of this wall is where the A zone is going to appear, and then you have the gun there, so that as soon as that A zone crosses into where you can see it, you can start aiming at it and start shooting at it. Rather than just, like you said, you're aiming at a big block of brown.
Yeah.
So you said it multiple times. We're going to get into it later, so we should get into it now. Talking about memory stages.
Yeah, I hate them. Not going to lie.
So what is a memory stage?
A memory stage would be, to kind of oversimplify it, let's say there is a bunch of solid walls so you can't see through them, and there's just ports all over the place, and there's targets scattered all over behind it, maybe shoulder to shoulder or whatever the case could be. And it's not apparent when you walk up and look through that port, I'm just going to shoot everything I can see, because maybe they overlap. Maybe you only have to go to a certain position. Maybe you can skip 2 positions altogether. So you can't just look at it and see immediately what the stage plan is.
Yeah. So, I mean, usually what these stages present is a lot of opportunities to shoot the same target multiple times. I mean, if you just went to every position and shot every target you could see, maybe you would shoot a bunch of targets like 3 or 4 times. And obviously that's not going to be super good for your time.
And there might be one target you can only see from one corner, one position.
Yeah, and people get real cute with these kind of stages of like masking things where they kind of look the same as other targets.
It's awful.
And like really trying to trick people. I personally don't love these stages either. My problem with them is less, what they do to me, because I will go early enough where I can go and walk the stage a whole bunch of times, and I'm going to make completely sure that I'm shooting all the targets. And I generally don't have problems with like the stage plan is going to make me, or the stage is going to be too difficult for me to plan my way through, because I've done this a lot and I'm experienced at it. The people who really suffer from that are people who are newer shooters, or maybe people who didn't show up the day before. Maybe it's their first major match, that sort of thing. Those people are going to look at the stage and be like, wait, what? Like, what's going on here? And they're going to have no idea, and it's going to go terribly, because they're going to miss targets, or they're going to shoot the same target like 6 times, and they're going to like triple the time of the people who are doing better on the stage.
Not to be a downer, but if you walk up to an area level or a section type of memory stage, and you just walk up to that stage in your 5 minutes, even if I stand next to you as soon as you get there and I say, okay, these are where the targets are, I'd give you a 50-50 chance at remembering where everything's at. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Even if I told you how I'm going to shoot it and where everything's at. Just because sometimes they suck. I do not like them. So you need to have extra time to make sure you're comfortable, you know where everything's at. I go through the same thing like we talked about, especially sending your buddy downrange or you standing by the port, whichever way it is. Like, hey, where do I see this target from? Well, I see it from these 3 ports. What port don't I have to go to? And just making sure you find everything. You're not counting a target twice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Area 3 is notorious for always setting up stages like this, at least once in the match, where the targets will be like all side to side and they all look the same. Like there's no shoots or anything. Like there's nothing on the targets that would help you differentiate what's what. And then they put them all side by side, and you can see the same targets over and over again in a bunch of different ports. So that is an example of a great place to go into tracker mode, where you start looking for like target sticks that have maybe paint on them,
a knot on them.
Yeah, I mean anything you can find that like looks different about that target.
A tree behind them.
Yeah,
a weed. Seriously, no, a weed by the target stand.
Completely. Yeah, I mean, so you start looking for. Or maybe there's like a piece of rebar sticking up from the ground, like where they had hammered the target in. Like
we're not joking about this, by the way.
Literally, that's the kind of stuff that I will look for, of things like just anything where, okay, the first target I'm shooting at has this weird little mark on the target stick, and so I'll look for that, and then I'll start shooting on that target, and I'll try and keep things as simple as possible from there. Of like, okay, I'm going to shoot at that target, and then I'm going to shoot left to right from there, and then I'm going to stop on the target that has like a bit of target stick, sticking up over the left shoulder of the target, like that sort of thing. So,
for sure. And not to sound like shooting like a coward, but my whole goal on those is just to stay alive and shoot a reasonable time, make sure you hit everything. I'm not trying to win the match. I'm just trying not to lose the match on those, which I realize is very cowardly to say, but that's how I look at them.
Yeah, I think you're right as far as you just want to stay alive and not mess anything up.
I don't need to be the fastest, but I don't need to be the slowest. You just want to be somewhere within the pace with reasonable points.
Yeah, those are generally not the stages where I'm going to go and push and try and make a move and like lay down a smoke and run. I'm just trying to, like you're saying, get out alive, hit all the targets, and move on. So, so now that we've talked about all the different things that kind of go into planning a stage, do you have anything else you want to add that we're of the topic before we move on to memorizing the stage?
The only thing I think we didn't touch on was just difficult position. Sometimes there's prone or a really low port. Sometimes it makes sense if you can take that position last, but sometimes whereas I don't know, not everybody, but I'm sure everybody's seen footage of nationals this past year, 2017 nationals. There was a stage where
Ironside nationals.
Sorry, yes,
there was like 100 nationals.
Oh, sorry.
USPSA nationals.
Thank you. Stage number, Cody, was
2.
Was it really?
Yeah.
Oh, all right. I'm impressed.
I
Anyway,
think it was stage 2. It was on the second day.
It doesn't matter. Anyway, there was a spot where you could go prone at the very beginning of the stage, and I saw some people that ran all the way down to the far end of the stage, shot those targets, and then were considering running back up. Some people actually did it, and some people were considering it. Run all the way down to the stage, the end, shoot, come all the way back up just so they could end at the prone part because it's slow and difficult to get up from. That's dumb. Sometimes you just have to do it and get back up and make the best of it. If you have the choice, if it was maybe triangular shaped, I'm sure I would, you'd want to take the difficult position last. But sometimes you just have to, do that in the middle of your stage. And I don't think you should be afraid to do that because everybody else is doing it also. But you don't want to go to extra effort and add extra time or difficulty just to avoid something like that.
Yeah. I thought you were talking about the one that was a triangle shaped stage.
No, the table start one with the mags.
Yeah, I thought that's the one you were
sorry.
talking about. So, yeah, that stage, there was a stage where it was basically a triangle where you'd go to 2 positions and then you would end on the one where you either go prone or you go to a knee, and it was like a super awkward position where you I think I just sat down, like
I did too.
Cross-legged.
Yeah.
But some people went prone, some people went like crazy sideways on one knee. So in that situation, it made sense to end there so you didn't have to get up
sure
and go backwards. But the one that Joel's talking about, yeah, it was like
a rectangular.
This was a stage that had like probably 20 yards of movement. It was a big stage with a lot of movement to the side, and but you started right at the spot where you would go prone. So, I mean, in that situation, you have to just get over the whatever trepidation of having to get up from going prone on the clock. I mean, there's almost no way unless you need like somebody to help you up.
Yeah, unless you have like a disability or something.
Yeah, unless you have a disability, there's no way that it's going to be, faster to run all the way down and run all the way back.
But guys that were perfectly capable, like in their 20s, I saw them do that. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
You saw people do that on that stage?
Yes.
I didn't see anybody do that on that
yes.
stage. Oh my God. I would have yelled at them.
There was guys during our walkthrough that were like, well, I'm thinking about doing this. I'm like, that is a terrible idea. Do not do that.
Yeah, I mean, so that is a spot where it really helps to...
And I get it. People are nervous about DQs. They're worried about sweeping themselves when they get up, that kind of stuff. But
yeah, I don't think, you have to be a stellar athlete to be good at USPSA, but that is one situation where, not being a person who, can't even stand up out of a chair without grunting, that helps in that situation of being able to stand up off the ground, and not have to have 3 people help you up and all that. So
this is completely unrelated, but while you're getting up, do not set your gun on the ground to leave it there grounded with the safety on while you get up, because that's a DQ also.
All right. Did somebody do that?
Somebody was talking about doing that because they thought it would be easier to get up.
Oh, boy. All right.
I know. I'm bringing out all these random things, but people have thought about that, so I just wanted to mention it.
All right. So now we've figured out a stage plan, all that. I think what most people do in this situation, they figure out their stage plan. Maybe they're in their 5-minute walkthrough at a match. And so the whole squad kind of gets in the Congo line. Everybody walks to the stage. They air gun it. They look at where they're going to show all the targets and all that. And then they go back to the end of the Congo line. They do it again. What I greatly prefer in this situation, and what I find a lot more helpful, is I'll go in the line. I will walk through the stage. I'll air gun it, all that, and then I will kind of walk to the back. I'll close my eyes and I will try and imagine shooting the stage in the way that I have planned. And I want to be able to picture every position exactly where the targets are, what it's going to look like, and all that. And then if I have any issues in there, then I will go and walk through it again, and I will try and find any errors in what my mental image was, or fill in any gaps of like I couldn't remember exactly what where the targets were in a certain position, and then I will close my eyes and try and do it again. And the more times I do it, the more clear that picture is going to get of what the stage looks like. And then once I have that in my mind, I will generally stop walking the stage and just focus on the memorization part. I think getting too caught up in physically walking the stage, you have a good idea of what walking the stage is going to feel like, but you don't really have a good mental image of what am I going to be thinking about while this is going on. So I find that a lot more helpful, and helps me minimize having all these errors of like forgetting where to go and all that.
What about when it's maybe you're on deck? What do you do as you progress towards? Because obviously then you get your walkthrough, you're done.
Yeah.
Start shooting, so you can't be walking the stage anymore. So you're pasting targets, setting steel, whatever. When do you decide you're done with that and it's time to start thinking about the stage again, and how do you do that?
So a bunch of times at the beginning during the walkthrough, I will visualize the stage, like I said, until I can't get it wrong, until it is burned in my mind exactly how I want it to be. I will, and then I'll stop. I'll start joking around, whatever. I'll talk to other people. Let's just say this is a normal stage where I'm somewhere in the middle of the shooting order, because on average most of the time you're somewhere in the middle, and that's what it is on most stages. So once I'm, they call out that I'm on deck, or I'll usually try and pay attention so that I know when I'm in the hole, or like I try and 3 or 4 shooters out, I stop pasting, or I will, paste 1 or 2 targets, and I'll kind of slack off on that. There's a little, that's a topic for another day, but you're not really supposed to.
Pro shooter Cody doesn't want to help out.
That's right. So
let the peasants go paste those targets.
Exactly.
Sit in the shade with your umbrella.
Exactly.
All right, continue. I don't want to derail your train of thought.
Yeah, so I'll stop pasting, or I will just, I'll paste the same targets every time, something I don't have to think about. And I will start really intensely visualizing what's going to look like in my head. I try and have every detail kind of burned in of, I'll get to the point of this is what my sights are going to look like on that target. This is kind of a basic idea of what the sight picture should look like on this target. This is what my feet are going to do. I'm going to move over, and then I'm going to shoot these targets in this order from there. And I'm just, in my mind, I'm running through exactly what it's going to look like from a first-person view when I shoot the stage. And I'll try and run through that a handful of more times, and until I'm the shooter who's about to go, and then I will go and physically walk it again. And I'll try and reproduce, exactly what I had just seen, but I'll just do it in slow motion. I don't go and like run at full speed or anything like that. I just go to each position. I will kind of air gun it, each position exactly how I want, and then I'll just go back to the start position and wait for them to tell me to go. Do you do the same thing?
Yep, I agree. I would not change my plan once the process you're talking about, where I'm still pasting targets, but I'm not really talking to anyone. I'm kind of zoned out. I just walk down there like a zombie, paste the targets after they're done scoring them, and then walk back. At that point, I'm not changing. I don't care if I see the national champion shoot before me and he has some little different take on it that might be maybe a second faster. I'm not going to change. I've already got a plan. I'm sticking with that. So at that point, I'm just pasting like a zombie once I'm sure they're scored. And then once it's actually my turn to shoot, the person before me is just shot. I kind of just zone out while he shoots. Maybe I'll watch, maybe not. And then some people really have a preference one way or the other. I don't think it matters to me. Once he's done shooting and the range is clear, or she is done shooting, the range is clear, I then start walking through the stage over and over again because I've already done the visualization. So now I'm just going to look at it all actually in first person, walking through it. So I will keep walking through the stage as long as it takes them to pace targets and reset steel. I'm not going to go to the back of the box, the back starting position, and just stand there and wait, for the RO to show up. So I'll just keep walking it over and over again. When I can kind of tell the last person is walking back from pasting the targets, then I'll go back to the starting position. Obviously, you don't want the RO to coach you like, hey, who's the next shooter? Come up here, kind of a deal. But I'm going to take my time while they're resetting that stage to walk through it. You might get walked through it 2 or 3 more times or 4 more times while they're doing that. So I think that's really important to keep walking through it as many times as you can because you're not slowing down the match at that point.
Yeah, I do some mixture. I don't think I'd go and walk it only once and then just stand there, but I'll do a mixture where I'll go and walk it again, and then I'll run through it in my mind again, and then I'll look around. If everybody's still pacing, it's still going to be a while, then I will go and walk through it again.
For sure.
And just kind of, alternate back and forth, but I definitely have my head in the game this whole time. I'm not just standing around with my hands in my pockets waiting for the RO to come back. This is really the time where you want to be hyper-focused on, what's about to happen, what you're going to do, and how awesome it's going to be.
Yeah, the sequences, how my sights are going to look, where I'm going to reload. I'm not just walking through like, yep, there's 4 targets here. I remember there being 4. Walk over here. Yeah, steel, paper. I'm actually air gunning it. I'm planning in my reloads, footwork, everything that I want to do. Only it will just be faster because obviously I'm not running. I'm just walking.
Yeah, and I do the same thing. Just, you're picturing through everything, and you just keep going until, make ready, and then it's time to go. And we'll talk about that in another episode. This has already been way longer than I expected it would be. So, well, thanks for listening, everybody. We've been really happy with the turnout so far. I mean, people are listening, and people are liking it, and we would appreciate all the reviews. Make sure you follow us on Instagram and Facebook, because we have both of those now. It's just Shoot Fast Podcast on both of them. Rate and review us on iTunes, tell your friends, all that stuff. All that stuff they say at the end of every podcast. Just do all that stuff
Like,
for us.
share, subscribe.
Yeah, like, share, subscribe. Buy our t-shirts. We don't have t-shirts, but, if we did, just send us money. That's fine.
That's cool.
Big thank you to Lucas at the Triangle Tactical Podcast. He gave us a shout-out on his last episode. It was very nice, and we appreciate that. I personally have been a big fan of his show for like 4 years. I've listened to almost every episode. And the Triangle Tactical Podcast is kind of the production quality that I measure mine against, in that it's not nearly as good. My production quality is not nearly as good as theirs. So he knows what he's doing, and you should listen to that podcast. It's pretty good. A lot of good information on there, and we appreciate it. Anything else you want to add, Joel?
No, you already gave me that drop dead look. Like, stop talking. So, no, I'm good.
Okay. Well, thanks for listening, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week.